a tight pelvic floor doesn't always mean it is actually strong, and it can be tight
Mhm.
and weak at the same time. I kind of think of things more like being really loose and then being really tight.
Okay.
So loose, a loose pelvic floor, think about like floppy and like not really hasn't got very much integrity or in it. For me, that would be like someone with a prolapse that like it's got a lot of downward pressure, it's been a bit stretched or postnatal, something like that. Those people are going to tend to have a lot more loss of things, accidentally have a really hard time holding anything in. So that would look like maybe people who rely on like incontinence pads all the time, that is just always
Mm.
coming out potentially, and maybe a lot of like heaviness feelings or dragging, pressure, bulging type feelings. And then we have tension based issues, which is more like problems getting anything in or getting anything out, like as in it's kind of like congested and tight.
If you've ever felt like exercise makes your symptoms worse, or you've been told to just do gentle yoga and hope for the best, this episode is going to change the game for you. In today's conversation, we explore what the pelvic floor is and how dysfunction can show up alongside digestive symptoms like bloating, constipation, urgency, and diarrhea. Joining me all the way from Australia is Courtenay Pollock, accredited exercise physiologist and founder of Her Exercise Physiology, a virtual clinic providing accessible, evidence based care for women with a special focus on pelvic health across the lifespan. Let's dive in.
Hey, hello, Courtney. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me. How are you?
Yeah, I'm super excited that we could connect despite our time zone
Yeah, always a
differences.
challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. It's morning for you and it's evening for me, but it's
Yeah,
all good.
100%.
Um, yeah, so I think just to get into the episode, if you want to explain a bit more about who you are and who you help, and then we'll get into today's topic.
Sure, I'd love to. So I am an accredited exercise physiologist, which, if you have no idea what that means, it means we basically use an exercise or movement-based approach to help people that live with any chronic or complex health conditions. So we can use exercise or movement in a prescriptive way, which helps change the physiology of the body. So I fall into that category. However, a lot of us would niche down into particular fields of interest. So mine is in women's health and more specifically in pelvic health. So use, I see a lot of clients that have anything pelvic health related. So think
Mm.
pelvic floor dysfunction. It might be pelvic pain, endometriosis. It could be prolapse issues. It could be like postnatal recovery, pelvic girdle pain during pregnancy. It could be menopause changes that we're trying to deal with a lot of health issues. So,
Mhm.
kind of like anything that umbrellas into that. My clinic is 100% virtual. So, I see clients from all over the place, which is
Cool.
really exciting. Connecting with people who are all over the world, actually, which is always really cool.
Yeah.
So the time zone thing's always an issue for me too,
Yeah.
which is really cool. But yeah, so that's pretty much, I guess, what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. My question was going to be what an exercise physiologist does, but I think you answered that pretty well. I guess how would you say that they're sort of different from just like a personal trainer? I know here in Canada we don't really have like a regulatory body. There's different ways you can get certified as like a personal trainer, but how is an exercise physiologist maybe different
Yeah.
and like a step above or a few steps above that?
So here in Australia, and and I think it's mostly in most other countries too, any exercise physiologist is a degree qualified professional. So we fall into
Hmm.
allied health over here, which is like the same level as like your chiropractor, your physiotherapist, your dietitian. So we've done four
Hmm.
years usually of university study,
Yeah.
which I guess is very different to a personal trainer.
Yes.
And we learn more about like the cellular changes within the body. So think about like how a chronic illness changes how your body would actually work. So then
Hmm.
we then use exercise as interventions to either reverse some of those in the case of something like maybe type 2 diabetes, or where it's like we can actually change how the body's turning up, or it might be to manage symptom presentation. So let's say, for example, with chronic pain or chronic pelvic pain in particular, which I feel like maybe some of your followers will resonate with this, which is why I picked this one. Um,
Hmm.
the way that it's impacted say the nervous system, muscle tissue, other organs, we can use certain types of movement and exercise programmed throughout the week to actually help address that. So then
Right.
quality of life and how you manage symptoms is improved. So if you were to go to a personal trainer, their knowledge is definitely not that deep in the sense of how this condition is affecting the body, and the choice of exercise, the volume that you do, how much weights, reps and sets that you might do is going to be very differently programmed because they don't understand how that works. So a lot of the times
Right.
when I have clients that have come from personal trainers, the particular types of exercise might be exacerbating their symptoms rather than supporting them. So we would then be able
Okay.
to address sort of like, we need to change this. This is actually not helpful for you. Some types of exercise are not helpful for people with problems or health conditions,
Right.
and they don't actually know that, because I think everything around exercise is just like, do more, go hard, work out, and feel like a boss. And like sometimes that is actually not helpful for people, which
Yeah.
we will dive more into today, I think, because that definitely is something that is a problem with pelvic floor health and pelvic health in general. So yeah, I guess I hope that's kind of given you a little bit more insight into the difference. It's
Yeah.
extremely significant though.
No, it does
Yeah.
make sense. I think about it even comparing like nutrition coaches or nutritionists to dietitians, because
Yeah.
nutrition, yeah,
Yep.
like nutrition is not a regulated term here in Canada. Anyone can call themselves that, but to be a dietitian, same as a exercise physiologist, you have to do that additional post-secondary study. And then is it also with the EP that you have to be regulated with a college as
Yeah,
well?
so we have like a
Yeah,
governing body that regulates us, yeah.
right,
And we have to be accredited through them. So we can then take rebates through health funding for us, or we have like a system here like Medicare, which is
right,
I guess reduced rebates for health care.
right.
So personal trainers don't get that, whereas we
Yeah,
actually, so it is
yeah.
quite similar to how you would associate with a nutritionist, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And even with like you may see a nutritionist or a nutrition coach just for like healthy behavior change and like helping with maybe more basic healthy eating, but like seeing a registered dietitian maybe more for medical nutrition therapy where you're using
Yeah.
nutrition, clinical interventions to treat a disease like diabetes or heart disease or
Yes, 100%.
yeah, gut
Very
issues
much
too.
the
So
same.
yeah, so I guess yeah, using more evidence-based research to sort of address more complex and more clinical conditions
Yeah.
and treatment. Yeah, cool. I guess what got you into this area of work?
Yeah.
Inspired.
I actually got into health, shall we say. I grew up as like an overweight kid.
Okay.
Like the typical like, oh, I'm like overweight and I need to go lose weight. And I think I just started training in the gym, and I did some personal training. I landed up in CrossFit for a while there,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was like, oh, this is really cool. I should like learn about the body. So I went to university and I started off with exercise sports science.
Hmm.
Um, and then I realized that the job potential from exercise sports science wasn't as good as exercise physiology. So you can't do chronic health conditions with exercise
Right.
sports science. I guess that would be a little bit more like strength and conditioning type stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, I probably should just go and do exercise phys so then I can like get out of uni and probably get some better jobs.
Yeah.
In doing that, I also studied personal training at the same time so that I could start working with clients and like develop my skills in that. And in that, so from my own experience with like really struggling with weight loss, I just didn't really know how to get there. I never really got results.
Hmm.
So studying that myself and then seeing that a lot of other clients that I had similar issues, I really wanted to like help them. But then a lot of the
Hmm.
barriers for them to do exercise were actually other complex issues. So I initially started out, I seemed to attract a lot of like postnatal clients where they were,
Oh,
I
okay.
would really like to go back to running and training, but like I've got abdominal separation and I've got prolapse. So we can't
Yeah.
actually get these like heavier lifting exercises or running. And it
Right.
was always like something was the barrier to achieving your fitness goals. And that was what I really
Yeah.
resonated with. It was like, I really understand this because like you really want to get to all these other things, but you can't.
Hmm.
So I kind of just navigated down into women's health and eventually I used to have like my own issues with CrossFit with leaking with double unders and skipping from like I don't have any kids either, which, you know, I always thought bladder issues and like pelvic floor problems were only for women who had children. And I was like, man, there's way more to this than just like having a kid.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to dive into this. And so as I did that, then I realized how many people in life go through pelvic health problems and pelvic floor issues that don't have children, that feel a little bit left out because they're like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody this. Like, I shouldn't have these problems because I don't have. So I actually don't really see a lot of pregnant and postnatal women because a lot of my content is really around other issues that are like, oh yeah, like, I can get help for this. It's not, it is actually very common for other people to have, you know, these symptoms. So yeah, I got into it like through that, I guess. And then I just didn't really care about any other like really clinical stuff. So a lot of other exercise physiologists will see like Parkinson's disease or like stroke rehab. And I was like, I don't really resonate with any of that. And I love the women's health and I love this. So I just went like full in down that way. A lot of EPs is short for exercise physiology. EPs will normally see like a lot of different types of people. They're very generalist, or they'll see, you know, heaps of variety in their day, whereas I don't do that. And it's quite rare to see an EP that only does one thing. So if anyone here is listening going, I've seen EPs and they do all this other stuff, it's probably why.
Right. Yeah, you're really specialized in the women's health space. And and just from working with people, finding that was like I guess, like you said, a barrier for more women being more active and feeling like they couldn't do harder exercise or get into more strength training, and maybe working with just like a general personal trainer who wasn't really helping them sort of like
100%.
get
and
past
like,
those barriers.
There's so many other health conditions later on in life that become a problem for women when we go through menopause that you have to set up all those foundations earlier, which looks like bone density, heart health, which looks like, you know, muscle tone. And if you aren't training well during the earlier years because you have all these barriers and you're like, oh, whatever, I don't really care, your future self will care when you get to that point and you're like, oh my gosh, I should have been doing this, you know, a lot longer. And I think women get to that age of about probably 30-ish where exercise actually becomes a lot more than just what you look like. And it's more about like function and how do I feel better? So I feel like if you can deal with the barriers earlier, then you're probably more inclined to actually want to do things for health and fitness, and you're setting up your long-term health to be way more successful. So I think, you know, if you don't know that, it's too late. It's like, I'm dealing with it now when it's at the very depths of the problem.
I guess we're in a time now where it's becoming a lot more talked about, even in the last like maybe 2-3 years, the talk around like menopause and setting yourself up for perimenopause, and the menopause transition has gotten like a lot of
I feel like that's a new
attention.
hot topic.
It is. And strength training, I saw, I think it was in like the Fit Insider newsletter. It's a good like just update of all the fitness health trends, but there was something around like, I should have checked the statistic, but I think in gyms in North America, like the number of like, I guess, female and women clients, and especially in the strength training section, has gone up like 150% or something. I'll double check that. But yeah, way more interest, like specifically from women in regards to like strength training in the last like 5 years or so, which is a good move.
Awesome.
Yeah, good move in the right direction. But to your point, maybe like there are women who want to get into that, but are still dealing with these sort of pelvic health issues that are holding them back from that. I just want to ask, before we get into that, I wanted to ask, are you still into CrossFit, or how do you feel about it now? Okay.
No, it's actually so funny because when I was at CrossFit, the coach that I actually had, I thought had so much knowledge, and I was like, man, this guy is so good. And then as I started training, I would be like, hey, what do you think about this? And he had no idea. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Like, you actually don't really know a lot. And I think the type of training is, it's not very well balanced from like in my opinion, unless you have like a really, really, really good coach. So they can vary so much. I just got a bit like, I don't do CrossFit anymore. I just train in the gym, weightlifting, and I think programming my own stuff because I know what I need. And that's what another thing I think is really important, which we might talk about today, is like each person actually does need something different most of the time. And those types of like group scenarios are great, but sometimes they don't meet the needs of what the person actually needs.
That's true. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So even just, yeah, leaning into the next part of the discussion, can you explain a bit more about what is the pelvic floor and what does it do
Sure.
for us?
One thing I think is really important to clear up, and I'm not sure, do you have a lot of like is yours just, do you see mostly women or are you mixed
I see
in your
mix.
work?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I see
okay.
a
So there's
mix.
maybe
Yeah.
even some men listening who
Mm-hmm.
also have pelvic floors, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
the first barrier, is that it is literally a muscle inside your body that everybody has.
Yes.
And I kind of think about it like it's dysfunction, unlike something maybe in the shoulder, which is like, you would get pain doing shoulder movements. The pelvic
Mm-hmm.
floor's function is to hold things in, keep you continent, and create stability within the pelvis. So
Right.
its dysfunction looks like loss of those functions, which is loss of control with pelvic floor, sorry, urinary or bowel. So those two issues, it's instead of pain, you get leaking, or maybe it doesn't come
Mm-hmm.
out very well. Even pelvic instability can be part of what that pelvic floor dysfunction looks like, which would look like maybe hip pain or back pain, where the
Mm-hmm.
pelvis isn't stable very properly. So something else kicks in and we get dysfunction around those joints. It's also really important for sexual function as well. So if you have any issues with that, pain, lack of any sensation, all of those are related to pelvic floor function as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically underneath your organs, like a big hammock, holding everything
Mm-hmm.
in from the tailbone to the front of your pubic bone and then out to the sides. It's very big and there's a lot of different muscles in that. It's not just one. And it's connected to every other part of your body basically through fascial integration. Like it kind of, feeds around and holds everything in. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really, really important muscle for anyone for creating a lot of central stability. So trunk stability so that you can move arms and limbs off. So the
Right.
work that I do is very much like for anyone who has basically hip problems, back problems, knee
Mm.
issues, even some shoulder issues, because it would stem from lack of central control,
Interesting. Yeah.
leaking, prolapse. Like you can see how it's very, very important for a lot
Mm-hmm.
of functions.
Yeah. Is it one muscle or is it a group of muscles?
It's groups. It's a group.
Okay.
So it's a
Okay.
lot of different muscles that will feed into each other.
Right.
Very well connected. So
Yeah. Okay. And I know I've even heard too, even just like a tight jaw, like clenching in your jaw, I guess from stress can also contribute to a tight pelvic floor. You
yeah,
can fact
yeah.
check that, but okay, you're great.
Yeah,
But
it's there's actually a really interesting research paper out that I think is so cool about doing a lot of manual release work through the jaw has seen significant
mm,
improvements in hip mobility, but that is where
hmm,
part of the pelvic floor actually joins into the side of the hip or
right.
into the hip socket. So it can affect that. But it's also mostly like there's a lot of um, fascial integration like down through your throat and into the rest of your body. But it's also
Yeah.
just a stress response thing. So pelvic floor tends to be recruited during stressful times
Hmm.
because of like it's like a little bit of a protective response. So
Right.
see, like tension in your jaw means probably tension in the rest of your body if you're like jaw
Yeah.
clenching and stressed, right? So um, it's a really integrated system. Everything is connected. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Something I do talk a lot about just with IBS and gut issues is that like things in your body don't exist in isolation. Like they're all connected and your body is such a like complex system that we can't just look at
yeah,
like one part of it or one thing that's going on. Is probably related to multiple different things and systems in your body. And it's
yeah,
the same with the pelvic floor. Like it's not just isolated to your pelvis. It's probably connected to what's going on in your
yeah,
brain and your body
100%.
and yeah,
Yeah,
all of those
yeah.
things too, right? What would you say are sort of like maybe red flags or common symptoms that someone is having issues with their pelvic floor dysfunction that sort of come up?
I guess the main ones and the obvious ones are leaking. That's what everyone thinks
Okay.
pelvic floor dysfunction is. That'd be involuntary loss of urine,
Okay.
or maybe even bowel, like fecal incontinence is also quite common that
Mm-hmm.
I think isn't getting any highlight at all, but it
Mm-hmm.
is very important. So
Yeah.
those two are your obvious ones because they're not supposed to be coming out involuntary, right? So people are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I've got pelvic floor issues. But the other issue is actually not being able to get anything out. So think
Right.
tension-based issues. So difficulties fully emptying your bladder or your bowel, having to like strain and push, which I'm sure is a big topic of conversation for maybe some of your listeners. But
Mm-hmm.
even things like not associated directly with pelvic floor that are almost secondary or like referral based issues. So we've got hip pain, hip dysfunction. So
Ah,
think about like that unresolved hip problem that you've just been seeing so many people to get help with, but no one's actually asked about your pelvic floor because the muscle tissue feeds into the hip socket.
mm-hmm.
So if it's not working well, then it will affect the hip. Even back pain. So the back of the pelvic floor attaches to the tailbone, which is the bottom of your spine. So it's going to pull on the spine and create changes up the chain. So we're going to get back pain issues.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of other symptoms that are generally not pelvic floor related that you would be like, I don't know why
Right.
I'm getting this problem. And if someone that you see doesn't have pelvic floor knowledge, they are not going to ask about pelvic floor symptoms. But when I find when I do like quite a bit of mentoring for other clinicians who are
Mm-hmm.
learning about this, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of their patients themselves will come in and they'll say, "Oh, have you got pelvic floor issues or like other symptoms related to maybe leaking or anything like that?"
Right.
When someone's maybe seeing them for back pain, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I actually do have all of these issues, and no one's ever asked me about them."
Mm.
And the primary problem is actually the pelvic floor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it can come up and it can show up in a lot of different ways. And I think
Mm.
the theme here is that it is more common than we think. And probably part of that
Yeah,
too is because a lot of people aren't talking about it, or maybe they feel
yeah.
embarrassed to share about it, or they aren't asked about it as well,
Yeah,
which is a good.
I think it's well, I mean, it is a pretty personal, like those things that are problematic are personal. You don't just talk to them, unless someone's really open and holds a nice space for you to talk about this, like a clinician, you're probably
Yeah.
not just going, oh, by the way, I accidentally pee myself all the time. If you're seeing
Hmm.
someone for back problems, like
Yeah.
they'd probably be like, oh, well, if the clinician doesn't think to ask, then yeah, it's awkward.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is
So,
too is that it can get worse over time. Like I find with a lot of clients who've been dealing with constipation for years, like decades, they tend to be the ones that have more of that like pelvic floor dysfunction. And then it makes it harder to treat the constipation. It's like fiber and water and movement won't work alone. Like there needs to be sort of that additional pelvic floor support, sometimes like biofeedback or other things that
yeah.
pelvic floor
Well, there's
physio
actually
or
it's so important, especially in constipation, because there's a mechanical component to going to the toilet too. It's not
hmm
just about how well your bowels function. If your
hmm
pelvic floor doesn't relax properly, its job is to hold everything in and stay closed until you
yeah,
need to go. So if it doesn't have the flexibility in there and can't open, then the mechanical side of your pelvic floor or your constipation could actually be the problem. And I see
yeah,
that a lot. There is actually quite a lot of diagnosed IBS for people who actually have pelvic floor problems, and the issue
hmm
is not being able to get it out properly. And
yeah,
so they're having, it's staying in the bowel, and you're getting chronic constipation, or even then bouts of diarrhea, like trying to come out around that. So
yeah,
when we think about like, there's two things. So for me, I almost am like, oh, I think you actually need gut health issues in some of my clients,
hmm
and like from a diet perspective. But then there's other people that are like, actually need pelvic floor support to help with
yeah,
this because your pelvic floor is designed to hold things into your bowels and into your bladder. Like that's its point. So,
exactly.
having any issues with both of those outside of, anything else is going to affect the other part of that system.
Definitely, yeah. I find with constipation, it's usually one or both of two things going on. Like one is slow colonic or like your large bowel movement. Something is causing the large bowel to not move like it should, and it could be bacterial or it could be thyroid, malnutrition,
Mm,
etc. And then the other piece of the puzzle is pelvic floor dysfunction
yeah.
and something going on with that. And sometimes they're together, or sometimes it's just one existing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
There's
definitely.
also that that contribution of like if you've had bowel issues for a while, then it
Yeah.
can then lead to pelvic floor problems and then make that worse over time as well. Like
Yeah.
straining. I mean, we can probably dive into that a bit more if you want
Yeah.
to, but it's, you know, they're kind of like, then you got to figure out like chicken or the egg, which is the problem.
Yes, exactly. I guess what would you say are sort of common causes then of sort of pelvic floor dysfunction or issues
Oh, there's
there?
so many because
Yeah.
it's got so many different, like it feeds into so many other systems. So
Yeah.
like postural issues can cause pelvic floor problems. So that
Mm.
could be constant sitting. It could be being on your feet too much. It could
Mm.
be even I see a lot of issues with people who have had a history of trying to hold in urine or, you know, feces too long. So,
Yeah.
or going too often just in case. Poor bowel, like poor habits, toileting habits.
Hmm.
It could be pregnancy history that's
Hmm.
manifested into something later. It could be another chronic health condition that is around cyclic pain. It could be history of physical trauma, mental, like any sort of trauma history will feed into
Hmm.
pelvic floor function. It could be even hormonal. So a lot of hormonal issues become a really
Right.
big problem because it's impact on tissue function. And then that can also feed into things like eating disorders. So if you've had like lack of like you've
Mm.
lost your period from a history of eating disorders, then that change of estrogen from a woman's perspective will affect muscle tissue. Same
Right.
way as what happens when you go through menopause. Same issues with hormonal changes during pregnancy. So like there's a huge, you know, fluctuation of things that could be contributing. Then we've
Yeah.
got issues with um, like hip injuries that have led into other dysfunction around the hip and then
Hmm.
into the pelvic floor. So like I see a lot of that people have like fallen off horses or they've had a car accident and they've
Right.
now got a hip issue that's now creating muscle dysfunction around the joint, and one of those muscles is the pelvic floor.
Hmm.
So there's actually so many chronic straining that could be from constipation. It could be from chronic coughing. That's a big one too. You'll notice lots of people have pelvic floor problems after having chronic coughs. Heavy
Interesting.
lifting,
Hmm.
power lifters, like ongoing, basically anything that's straining through your trunk
Hmm.
can cause a lot of dysfunction too. So a lot more than just pregnancy and postnatal, which I feel like got the highlight for so long.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite a long list, I
Yeah.
would say. Yeah, even the hormonal one too, I believe. Yeah, I was aware of that. Like low estrogen levels
Yep.
can impact the pelvic floor function. So even for like clients, I have female clients who are really active but are maybe under eating. There's like sort of like
Yeah.
energy deficiency, which then can lead to, you know, less production of estrogen and loss of period, can
Yeah.
contribute to pelvic floor issues and then potentially constipation as well,
Yeah.
which is, yeah,
Yeah.
I see it as like a common one. But as you said, it doesn't just exist like in female clients. I do have male clients to have, you know, IBS, but also there's an aspect of the pelvic floor. I think, is
Yeah.
it dyssynergic defecation? That's a common one that I
Yeah, so that's
see.
like kind of like doing the opposite to what it should. So contracting rather than relaxing when going to the bathroom.
Right.
Um, I think males tend to have more back pelvic floor issues because the front for them is so
Mm,
different.
right.
They've got a really long urethra. So for them, like incontinence, urinary incontinence is not as common as what it is
Right.
sort of women. But I hear a lot more like tailbone pain, like back pain, posterior hip, like back of the hip socket pain,
Hmm.
issues getting bowel movements going. I mean, they will have erectile dysfunction if there's pelvic floor issues as well, which I think is
Yeah.
also a big red flag for some men. But it's exactly like it's the same thing. It's designed to hold everything in, keep it up,
Yeah.
and support you. So similar symptoms. But men, poor, they don't even, I mean, this is one thing they don't get the highlight about. It's like
Yeah.
pelvic health in men is actually also a problem as well. So
What's the difference between having a weak pelvic floor and a tight pelvic floor? And are they the same thing or do they exist separately?
this is a good question because a tight pelvic floor doesn't always mean it is actually strong, and it can be tight
Mhm.
and weak at the same time. I kind of think of things more like being really loose and then being really tight.
Okay.
So a loose pelvic floor, think about like floppy and like not really hasn't got very much integrity or in it. Like
Hmm.
for me, that would be like someone with a prolapse that like it's got a lot of downward pressure, it's been a bit stretched or postnatal, something like that. Um, those people are going to tend to have a lot more loss of things, accidentally have a really hard time holding anything in. So that would look like maybe people who rely on like incontinence pads all the time, that is just always
Mm.
coming out potentially. Um, and maybe a lot of like heaviness feelings or dragging, pressure, bulging type feelings. Not
Hmm.
always the case, but generally is like that. And then we have tension-based issues, which is more like problems getting anything in or getting anything out, like as in it's kind of like congested and tight and pain, very much pain associated.
Hmm.
So when it's weak, though, that just means it's not very strong in a sense of its function. So when a pelvic floor is actually tight, it will have, it also isn't strong because it's stuck in this tightened position all the time. That when
Right.
you're trying to use it, it doesn't have strength because it doesn't get its full range of motion all the time. It's just kind of like any other muscle in the body.
Mm.
So that might look like having troubles holding in when you really need to go because it's not strong enough for you to like keep holding on. It's like
Hmm.
quite fatigues quite easily. There might be a limit, a ceiling limit of strength. So maybe if you've got tension, this is very common in tension. You'll have tension issues and you might not have leaking at all until you do heavy lifting. And then it's not strong enough at those heavier loads. It's got no give and
Hmm.
flexibility in it. So everything just kind of like rushes out.
Hmm.
So those people are like, oh, I better do more pelvic floor exercises and squeeze and lift. But in reality, it's really going to help them because they need to achieve full range of motion, which means properly relaxing and properly contracting to get the
Ah.
functional strength that they actually need. So it's a
Hmm.
little bit harder to kind of blanket rule like what these look like without really seeing the individual.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to tell what you have. I think more like if you're having anything, any issues getting anything out or getting anything in, so that might look like intimacy, tampons, menstrual cups, those types of things,
Yeah.
as well as actually having a full bladder release or full bowel release.
Right.
That is tension based issues to me. Whereas, like, if you can't keep anything in or out at all, and that might, even tampons falling out, menstrual cups falling out, those types of things to me is like weak but loose, more like loose and like isn't like
Mm.
contracting enough, if that makes sense.
Okay. But in both instances, you tend to see it's more weak, essentially.
Yeah, it's
That kind of
always
the
going to be. I think
overarching issue is just that it's not strong. It's not doing what it needs to be doing. The
yeah, it's
muscles
just not doing
are
its
weak.
job. Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
some, I mean, there is some scenarios where there is a lot of strength in a muscle, but it's not functional. So think of someone
Right.
who has like, this is really common in endometriosis or pelvic pain,
Hmm.
where there's a lot of accidental contraction and gripping of the muscle tissue because of like
Mm.
they're trying to like guard. They're in a lot of guarding. So this could be appropriate for any bowel issues as well,
Yeah.
where that muscle tissue is getting thicker because they're constantly contracting it, but it
Right.
doesn't actually function very well. So
Mm.
it's still not holding things in very well. It's still causing a lot of pain. But once you start to get full range of motion, the strength is probably okay. So these are people that have maybe had internal checks, and the physiotherapist or the physical therapist, I think you call them over there,
Mm.
might be like, you have a
Physiotherapist.
really a physiotherapist, yeah.
Yeah.
They might say, oh, you've got a really strong pelvic floor, but it's very tight. So it's
Mm.
kind of confusing. It's like, well, why is it a problem? It's because it's
Right.
not functioning properly. We do need a level of like flexibility in the muscle. Like something that's
Right.
stuck in a chronic tight position anywhere in the body is never going to be helpful because
Right.
it's going to pull on everything and be like angry and tight and stuck. And it needs to be functional, I think, is a much better word. It needs to do its job properly rather than be too tight or too weak.
Right. I guess I even think about like bodybuilders. They work so
Yeah.
hard to like build up the muscle and they may be really strong, but a lot of them like lack really the mobility to even just do like,
Yeah.
raise their arm over their
Over the
shoulder
head.
or
Yeah.
yeah, kind of like
Yep.
to, or hold their arms out. So there's sort of like, I guess lacking that like full range of motion that the muscles should be
Yeah.
able to do. So you're saying it could be the
Yes.
same thing with the pelvic floor where
Yeah.
it could be
Yeah. The
be
pelvic.
strong, but it's still not able to like function in all the ways that it should be.
Yeah. I feel like
Yeah.
a healthy function of healthy pelvic floor shouldn't have any problems with it. Like you shouldn't experience anything
Right.
wrong.
Right.
So if it's having problems with something, it's either weak or strong, weak or
Mhm.
tight, or not fully getting its best range of motion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, that helps to put it in that perspective. I guess what yeah, I did want to ask just around like the nervous system part of it. And I did see in a lot of your content too, you talk about like nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
That's actually a theme that's come up in like multiple interviews when we talk about different areas of health and disease. Like it always comes back to nervous system. But what would you say is sort of the connection between our pelvic floor and nervous system, and what does it mean to regulate your nervous system to support pelvic floor health?
Yeah. So a lot of my content you'll see is actually around pelvic pain and endometriosis. That's a really big
Okay.
population that I see. And they have a lot of nervous system dysfunction from chronic pain.
Mm.
So they have to actually address that because the driving problem with a lot of their muscle dysfunction is coming from a very overactive nervous system. So when we think about what the nervous system is, it's like our signaling system based on how we feel. So if someone is constantly feeling in this fight, I think about it like energy mobilization rather than fight or flight, because sometimes it's
Mhm.
actually good. Our sympathetic nervous system, where we're doing exercise, like that is a good thing, but it's
Yeah.
also a heightening exercise rather than like a relaxing exercise. So, if you're in that state all the time, then you're going to be like on, muscles are ready to go to like push you forward in energy mobilization.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of muscle dysfunction that comes about from that, from like a overactive point of view. Um, so we need to actually address that for the relaxation side. So this is a lot more about pelvic floor tension.
Okay.
We can't relax the pelvic floor if the body is in an on state all the time. It's a little bit more difficult. There is actually a really cool research paper about women who were shown threatening images
Mm.
in like physically threatening, emotionally threatening, and then I think there was also like a sexual threatening. And
Mm.
they were measuring muscle tissue activity, and the pelvic floor was heightened in all of them with
Mm.
visual like threatening scenarios. So we know that at a time when a woman feels threatened, whatever that
Yeah.
might look like in every situation, they go and they'll
Mhm.
be like, get this like holding, like guarding sensation. So we think about life and we think about, I don't know if you, I don't have children, but I hear it's pretty much like you're a bit stressed 24/7
Yes.
or work, or maybe there's, life issues where you're feeling
Mm.
like that all the time, then you're going to
Mm.
have this ongoing contraction of the pelvic floor. So
Right.
when we think about the nervous system side, where that's designed to like calm us down a little bit and bring us down into this more like recovery, restful state, which is super
Mhm.
important for bathrooming. So like if you're trying to go to the bathroom or you're trying to have a bowel movement or go to the toilet urinary wise, if your system is so like on and you can't relax through your pelvic floor, nothing's going to come out. So
Right.
we have to teach you, okay, it's safe to go into these like relaxing states. That's going to
Mhm.
help your muscle actually relax. So
Yeah.
this is where like I think release, there's a lot of information about internal release of the pelvic floor, really helpful at some point. However, it
Mm.
doesn't teach the body how to actually take control of that release yourself. So a lot of the work I
Mhm.
do, it's all virtual. I don't do any internal work. I'm not even actually qualified to do an internal examination. We don't do that as exercise physiologists.
Okay.
So I have to teach people to check in with their nervous system, relax, get them in a down
Mhm.
regulated state so that we can then actually get the pelvic floor to relax properly and then
Right.
understand what that feels like so that when you need to go to the bathroom or even after exercise, if you're having pelvic
Mhm.
floor problems or tension after exercise, which is super common, you can
Mhm.
go, okay, bring that back down. Let's relax that now. Intimate times, pain with penetration. If you're having a lot of that, you need to be able to control that and relax through your pelvic floor, which
Yeah.
requires you to check in with your body, relax everything, go into a more sympathetic, a parasympathetic state. So that's why a lot of the initial stuff for me is actually nervous system work, because I can't deal with anything if you can't get relaxed. It's never going
Exactly.
to. So we have to take,
So,
yeah, we have to take like a bit of like an approach to that. In the scenario of like a lot of weakness, I'm thinking someone who has maybe prolapse or something like that. Sometimes that's definitely not a problem. It's not, the nervous system isn't
mhm.
driving a prolapse, right? That's actually damage, physical damage to the tissues. I think that's important to talk about because chronic straining can lead to prolapse, which is, I think, something that would maybe resonate a lot with the listeners here if they've got gut health issues and they're constantly trying to push anything out on the bathroom. That
Mhm.
over time can strain the tissues and cause a prolapse. And that would be more about, we don't need to do as much nervous system work there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we do, depending on the person, but it's not driving problems with your pelvic floor in that scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess even
Yeah.
the nervous system connection, like think about it in the aspect of like traveling. Like I know I have a lot of um like more IBS-C or constipation clients who, when they travel, are more likely to, skip a bowel movement. And part of that is
Yeah.
just because like you're out of your regular routine. Part of it's time zone change, so there's the impact on like circadian rhythms. But I think the biggest thing is just like stress and being in a different
Yeah.
environment and your nervous system just being a little bit more on high alert. And like you said, not in that like the rest and digest state or the
Yeah.
parasympathetic state where it's able to sort of relax. So that's one thing that might like resonate with the people listening. But just to that point, like even trying to help yourself relax and putting like bowel routine steps in place in the morning where you give yourself some time to just like take it easy, like allow yourself some time to give your body, like let your body relax and feel like it's comfortable to use the
Yeah.
washroom versus what a lot of people tend to do is like wake up, we look at our phones, check social media, email,
Yeah.
constant
Yeah.
onboarding of stress right away, and maybe rush to start the day. And you can see how that may,
Yeah.
contribute to the pelvic floor feeling tight and then not wanting to
Go to the
eliminate or
bathroom.
sort of impact
Yeah.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think our nervous system is a way for us, like we have these responses from a previous experience that might have been a little bit, I want to say traumatic in any
Yeah.
way. So like if
Mm-hmm.
you're someone who really struggles with the bathroom, say, and you've got a lot of pain
Yeah.
going to the toilet even, your body is going to you're going to sit on the toilet and you're going to have this nervous system response where your body goes, I know this isn't comfortable. I'm really nervous. It's going to be painful. And everything goes into this like, protect me, which is
Mm-hmm.
gripping tension. So like if you can then understand how that is affecting how you have a bowel movement, like then we know,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's actually the power of like retraining what that association actually is. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like, how do we shift nervous systems in that scenario, understanding what's actually happening on a physiological level, so that you can then repair like, oh, maybe I can have a better bowel movement, and then restart believing, oh, going to the toilet isn't that bad. So
Right.
there's like so much involved in the nervous system. It's like our signaling system of our body to keep us safe, right? So many, it'll just automatically do things, and we're like, you try and not let it happen, and it's like, no, it's
Yeah.
happening.
Right. And just saying like rewiring those
Mm,
connections or the previous
yeah.
conditioning that sort of led to
Yeah,
the
100%.
stress
And that
around
can
it.
just
Yeah.
like, I don't know whether this is actually relevant or not for any of your listeners and whether this is a good tip, but I actually had a client who had IBS,
Mm-hmm.
but more constipation based type. And going to the bathroom, she had that like dyssynergic contractions.
Yeah.
But if she actually did like a poo outside in the bush, like when she was out and about, no
Yeah.
problems whatsoever. So like environment for
Interesting.
her
Oh.
was such a big change because the toilet
Mm-hmm.
environment was the stress for her, and that
Mm.
reaction of the nervous system going like, I know this is going to be painful. Positional wise, it was definitely different outside than sitting on a toilet.
Yeah.
But she was like, never have this problem outside. And I was like, whoa, this is actually crazy because you're more relaxed in that environment because you've always had a good bowel movement there. So your body
Yeah.
isn't going, oh my God, this is the problem. Like this is a nervous system response. This is
Right.
affecting how you're going to the toilet. This is affecting your pelvic floor. So
Hmm.
like if that's you, maybe I was like, maybe you can just poo outside.
Yeah. Go find a
But we like
bush.
tried to like change the environment of her toilet. Like, how do we make this feel more like outside?
Right. Right. Put more
Which is like so
plants.
crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just
So
get some like
maybe you can
nature
start doing.
sounds going and
Yeah, we put like more
yeah.
plants in her bathroom. I think
Oh.
we thought like I tried to get her to visualize that outside.
Oh.
And I think it actually eventually worked because she was like, wow, I actually don't have this problem normally. Like I just need to try and
Wow.
bring that feeling into the toilet. I was
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that is a good tip. I'm sure some people
Yeah.
listening are like, huh, didn't think of
Yeah. They're like, oh my God,
that.
same. Yeah, but no
Yeah.
one tells you unless you ask, right? Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't say, oh, have you ever pooed outside and does it feel better?
Well, a lot of people haven't. I mean, yeah, unless you've gone
Yeah.
camping or um,
Yeah.
I'm a runner and sometimes, there's not a
Yeah.
washroom
See,
nearby.
everybody has though. Everybody
So,
has.
so
Being
yeah.
outside is actually a nervous system regulator. Like being in green spaces helps your nervous system calm down. So I
Oh, that's
sometimes
true
I wonder
too.
if
Yeah.
that's actually the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It could just be that fresh air and
Yeah.
green and yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, just if you want to maybe walk us through a bit more about what, like if you were to work with someone who does have IBS or gut issues dealing with pelvic floor considerations, let's say if it's loose and they're having trouble like holding stuff in, what might sort of that like, I guess, exercise plan look like for them? Let's say you've got the like nervous system stuff sort of under control. What would be sort of the prescription, or what might that look like?
Yeah, so I think it's important to realize that an exercise physiologist might not just go, here's a gym program, go and do it in the gym, right? We have like, I want you to think about bridging this gap between maybe what a physiotherapist would do, where you're just working on like one muscle rehab exercise and then into a program all the way to that gap. So for us, your program would look a lot like a rehab-based initial program where we're like, okay, we're training all the muscles around your pelvis to function better. We're working through pelvic floor. We're retraining how you use your core. We're training all the muscles around your pelvis so the pelvic stability component is really healthy as well. There's a lot of things feeding into pelvic floor function that could actually be, contributing to the problem. So we start to build those really foundational stability-based muscles and retraining. And then that would look like, okay, now that we want to strengthen that system so that we can increase the strength of your pelvic floor. So now we got to make sure you do that well in other movements. So that might look like, how well do you brace your pelvic floor and your core in squatting, in lunging, hinging exercises. Then it might look like, now we're going to add some weights to that and strengthen everything. So as you hold something, your external weight is now heavier. You've got a grip engage through your pelvic floor, probably a better word. So now you're basically like holding more weight at the same time you're turning your pelvic floor on, so it's getting stronger. And then over time we load and load and load, so its function is better, its strength is better, and its endurance is better. Then it might look like, how do we integrate this into jumping and impact exercises? So they're the hardest ones, because there's a lot more ground reaction forces and things that have to work, pelvic floor has to work against. So that's kind of like the hardest one. So if you're currently dealing with that symptom, there's a big process to get to that. You can't just like improve it straight away into that. So it looks like rehab, and then it's like half rehab, half exercise, where it's like body weight movements and retraining. And then it looks like, okay, now we go and do strength training. And now we're in this like block of strengthening over 8 weeks, doing, functional exercises with proper awareness around your pelvic floor and core.
Yeah. Okay. And you sort of progress your clients through those stages, just depending on how they're, I guess how they're improving, and sort of like building on their plan, sort of as you go.
Yeah, it's very much dependent on the person, because some people might not need to go all the way back to the beginning because they've done a little bit of pelvic floor work before, or they might have really good awareness. So once you teach them that, you're like, oh, you understand what you're doing. Let's go into this stage. But the idea is to like increase its capacity. So that would look like, how do I get this doing more regularly, heavier weights, longer? Just like any other, I kind of think about it like running. Like when you first start running, you probably can only do a minute and then you're like dying, right? But then over time, you just do a little bit more, and then you get a little bit faster. And then maybe you're going up hills and mountains, and that's harder again. So it's kind of the same thing. It's just a muscle that we can't see.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can't just like strengthen it in a day. Like it takes weeks, months.
And it's
years.
not ever in isolation, right? Like it's not you don't just do pelvic floor squeezes and that's it. It has to be added into everything else, which is also the issue. Is like, I do Kegels, pelvic floor squeezes is great, but like, to increase your push-ups, you don't just do one exercise and hope that the rest of the push-up is easy, right? Like you need good core strength, bicep strength, you need shoulder stability, you need core strength. So, it's the same. We need to like integrate it into everything else, because it has to turn on when you're squatting, not just when you do a pelvic floor lift.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way of explaining it too. Would you say that there's any exercises that are more beneficial for the pelvic floor and some that are not? Or would you say it just depends on the person and where they're at and what they're dealing with?
It definitely depends on the person, but it's all about how you use it. So it's a stability-based muscle, really, at the end of the day. So if you're not using it well in your other exercises, then it's not contributing to stability, or you might actually weaken it over time. It's a little bit like the rotator cuff kind of It's not really like any muscle really, but you know, shoulder issues. Like you might be super strong in your shoulder. If anyone's had a shoulder injury, I feel like this resonates well. They'll get you to like, oh, you've got this rotator cuff issue. You've got to like do your external rotations. But the problem is actually in overhead pressing, something like that. So when we think about improving that, like if you're not using it well in the other exercises, that's where the problems actually are. So there's nothing that's like bad for the pelvic floor unless you're not using it well in that exercise, I think personally. Or you're doing exercises that are adding to the problem. So there's a lot of issues with pelvic floor tightness and doing a lot of external hip rotation, which looks like, you know, clams, sideline clams, where you would open up your leg and push out, or even abductor machine, where you sit on the machine and you push your legs out. Like, so they work the very, very deep back of the hip muscles, which feed into the back of the pelvic floor. So if there's tension in the back of the pelvic floor and those muscles already have tension in them, then you're going to be adding more tension by doing those exercises. This is where I see a lot of issues coming from personal trainers, where they don't understand they're actually tightening an already tight muscle. They're making it worse. So sometimes you might be doing a bad exercise because it's not supportive to your particular issue. Whereas like some people actually need that external rotation strength, and that's causing a lot of weakness into the pelvic floor. So we need to actually do that. So there's never going to be a bad exercise that's worse for your pelvic floor. It's actually more about, are you doing this exercise that is helpful, or is it unhelpful for you?
Right. Or sort of, are you ready to engage in that exercise at your point of your journey, like, and not get symptoms? So maybe you're not ready to run yet without, you know, experiencing bladder or bowel
because
leakage.
Running is actually like quite a lot of load down on the pelvic floor. And if it's weak, you probably have problems. But it's also a really great way to continue strengthening the pelvic floor in its function if you're ready and you can handle a bit of running. We're always going to be working at this level that's like improving its function, where you are in that journey is important.
Yeah. But even with running too, it's so much bouncing and getting kind of that like jostling of the pelvic floor. So we see a lot of runners with IBS and gut issues, and they deal with a lot of like urgency and, you know, needing to use the washroom very frequently on runs. And part of that is like there's diet components that we adjust and making sure they're fueling properly in hydration. But sometimes too, it can be an aspect of like pelvic floor issues too, and the running can exacerbate it, right?
Yeah, and the issue with a lot of that stuff, especially with gut problems, is the bloating. Is a lot of load on the pelvic floor. So we look at load on a muscle tissue as either positive or negative. Too much load can cause weakness and like stretching, say, which would look like bloating down out towards the front of your abs, but also down onto your pelvic floor. Like lots of pressure downwards can come from bloating. But then, you know, if you have enough load, which would be like squeezing and lifting, that's a load. And then weighting something, that's a load as well. That's a positive load that's contributing to strength. So like the runner issue is that they've probably already had a lot of downward load that's unhelpful for pelvic floor. And then they're adding in strength, like running, and it's too flexible and it's like going like this all the time, when in reality they actually need a little bit more strengthening in it. But you know, once they get that and they're starting to run again, if it's working really, really well, then it might actually help to strengthen it a long time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. We put it that way too. I did want to ask, I compiled like a small list of sort of pelvic floor tools and hacks. I was going to ask you to rate them. Rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being like, ditch it, not helpful at all. 10 being like, yes, you need to do this. So feel free to
I'm bad at rating. Any of these like 1 to 10 rating scales, I'm always really bad at.
Okay.
I will see how we go.
Yeah, it's okay. You can always change.
I'll be like, pass. Can I phone a friend?
Yeah. I'll allow it. You get 1 of each. The first one is standing desks. This is more around like not sitting all day, but if someone has the opportunity to invest in a standing desk, what are your thoughts?
Do I have to give it a number, or can I just explain my thoughts on it?
Sure. Explain your thoughts.
Because the body hates being in the same position for too long. It doesn't matter what that is, right? So if you're like, people who stand all day in one spot stationary are almost just as bad as standing sitting all day in one spot. Like we need to be moving around and changing our positions.
Right.
Muscles will change to whatever position you put them in for too long. So I love a standing desk idea if it's like used up and down and you sit and then you stand and then you move around
Yeah.
and you go get a water and you come back and you stand back up. Really important. But people who stand desks for too long, that's a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor if it's already weak. So if you
Right.
have weakness in your pelvic floor, you'll find at the end of the day, you're getting heaviness feelings if you're on your feet for too long because it's not
Hmm.
strong enough to hold you there. So like super important, needs to be well used.
Okay.
And everyone always like, when was the last time you stood at a desk and actually stood there properly without like shifting your weight to one side,
Yeah, I do that.
staying
I
on one
lean on
hip?
one hip and I
Yeah, you
catch
lean on one
myself.
hip. So
Yeah.
like, I think the idea is actually change your position as regularly as you can in
Mm,
any different position. So like I sit on the floor, I kneel, I stand, I go and sit at a different desk. Do you know what I mean?
yes. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's going to lead
Yeah.
into my next. Well, did you want to give the standing desk a number? Throw it out.
Um, I don't, I'm like, I think maybe like a 7.
Okay, I was going to guess 7.
I
Not
was
like
like
10, but
7. It's not
yeah.
like perfect, but it's not like bad.
Okay. The next one were the medicine ball chairs. So these, it's just an idea of like it's not a typical chair, so you're sitting in a different way. I don't know if you're familiar
Yeah.
with them, but they're like the
I have
exercise
only
ball
really
chairs.
seen them a couple of times. Like I've used a
Okay.
medicine ball to sit on,
Okay.
um, which I found helpful because I moved around quite a lot when I did that.
Yeah.
But I also found that my knees were too high to my hips, and I got a lot of hip tightness in the front of my
Mm,
hips. And because I was
interesting.
bouncing all the time, I had like
Yeah.
these like just like contracting. And I was like, oh, I actually don't know if I love this. Um, so I mean, maybe you could have the medicine ball chair with standing desk, and then you can just
Right.
like choose between everything.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
mean, I think maybe 5.
5. Okay.
I'm like, there's way too much pressure on this.
It's okay.
I'm like, I should be like, don't ask me to rate things.
The other one, the next one is like sitting in a deep squat position for at least like a couple minutes a day. I've heard that as
Yeah, good.
another tip.
I
Good.
reckon that's a good one for tension.
Okay.
So
Oh, okay.
10 for tension,
Tension.
unless you have hip problems and you can't actually do it. But
Okay.
for weakness, super vulnerable. People with prolapse will feel like, oh my gosh, this is way too vulnerable and everything's going to fall out because it's
Right.
stretching the pelvic floor quite a lot. So I
Right.
wouldn't put anyone who has a lot of laxity and looseness in a deep squat straight away.
Ah,
So
okay.
0 for them.
Okay.
See,
Okay.
it's like
I like that.
relative to the person.
I like
I'm
that.
like, I'm just imagining someone with prolapse going, oh, 10 out of 10, I got to do that. And then making their prolapse worse listening to
Yeah,
this.
I
So
think that was a good
I'm covering all
description.
grounds.
Yes. The next one are pelvic floor trainers. So I think this encompasses like different devices, but
Yeah.
thoughts. What are your
Um,
thoughts?
Thoughts on this? I don't love devices at all.
Okay.
Um, but I'm a big believer in integration of the pelvic floor with everything else. So the trainer doesn't do that, right? Like you just squeeze your pelvic floor and that's it. It's kind of like just doing pelvic floor only, isolated stuff.
Yeah.
But there is a very good place for them for people who cannot connect with their pelvic floor straight away. So if you can't actually turn on your pelvic floor and feel it and know if you're
Mm,
doing it correctly, then you need some help with that. And that's where the
okay.
devices, I think, have a really good place. Or there's
Right.
so much weakness that you can't get strength by just doing a pelvic floor lift. You have to start there. You have to really start with training the pelvic floor. And if you can't do that, you need someone to help you. So I think a
Right.
trainer would be good, but I feel like you need to get help understanding that a little bit more with someone who maybe knows what they're talking about.
Okay.
I actually have never had a go at one of these, not gonna lie.
Okay. Okay.
But I've also seen a lot of problems come about from them because people that have tightness in their pelvic floor use a trainer and increase the tightness. So if you don't really know if it's suitable for you, then it could be a wrong choice.
Oh.
Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I don't really love trainers. I'm gonna say like 2.
Oh. Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
But that's my personal opinion as a practitioner who doesn't do internal work. You'll find a very different other practitioners will love them.
Yeah.
Depending on who they see. So
Okay. And it
do
can
your
kind of
research on that.
vary, I think, from like there's wearables to like little weight sets, and some of them are connected to apps that give you like feedback. So it can
Yeah.
kind of range, but yeah, overall, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, just get some help from someone, do it properly, like to retrain the muscles and learn how to
Yeah,
strengthen it through that exercise.
right.
I think that works well, but I'm biased because that's what I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So
okay.
I should
Uh,
buy one and have a go and see what it's like, but I don't really need it, so I feel like it'd be pointless.
yeah, yeah. You can always maybe reach out, get them to send you one, do a review,
Yeah, I'll do a review.
unbiased review. Next one are Kegels.
Kegels. Like I said before, you have to start with learning to contract your pelvic floor, but you have to learn how to
Hmm.
contract and relax your pelvic floor.
Okay.
Most people do Kegels from the squeeze and they're just lifting and squeezing and squeezing, and that's a tension issue over time. Like you're asking for too much tightness eventually.
Okay.
But that's level one, right? I teach that in my very first consult with people, and by the end of, I usually do about, on average, maybe 6 consults with people over like a 12-week block, and we just retrain into gym programs.
Yeah.
So like that's like exercise number one. And then we go, okay,
Oh,
now how do
okay.
we do that in with your abdominals? And now how do we do that in core work? And then how do we do that in squats? So if you don't move beyond that, you're never going to get anywhere.
Okay.
So um Kegels themselves, I don't call them Kegels because I just call them like you're just retraining your pelvic floor by doing pelvic floor exercises, like relaxing and
Okay.
contracting. But that's a tough one. 3.
A 3. Okay.
Yeah, important, but like it's not going to solve your problem. So
Right.
you have to do
So,
more
but
than
you
that.
said it's like foundation, like you would start there, but you don't want to just stay there. You need to
Yeah,
progress
because you'll
past
just be
that.
doing Kegels every day for the rest of your life. Like that's not fun. You want to be able to
Right.
go, okay, I've retrained and I've got strength and now I just go to the gym and my problems are fixed, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to do, if you've got a shoulder injury and you have to do rotator cuff external rotations
Yeah.
every single day for the rest of your life, but that's not fixing your problem.
Yeah. And most people won't stick to that either.
You don't
So,
stick to it anyway. And then
yeah.
so I like them at the beginning and then done. Throw
Right.
them in the bin after that. Like
Okay.
keep going to the next level, progress.
Okay. Noted. Uh,
I'm sorry.
2
I
more.
hope these answers, you don't look like you're expecting these responses from me.
No, no, they're good. No, no, I'm very much appreciating them. I think they were in
Okay.
alignment with what I thought, so it's
Okay,
okay.
good.
2 more. Next one is diaphragmatic breathing, or we'll just say
Yes.
breath work.
10 out of 10. Hands
Ah,
down. Most important part of pelvic floor work.
ah, because it
Because they
links
have a
back to that
relationship.
nervous system
Yeah,
regulation
nervous
and
system, but the pelvic floor and the diaphragm have a relationship where they work in sync together. And that's how
okay.
you manage pressure. So I don't know if you'll ever do a video of this, but if you're watching me,
Mm-hmm.
as you take your inhale breath, your pelvic floor drops. So your diaphragm inhale, pelvic floor, and as you exhale, it does this all day,
Right.
every single time. It's supposed to do that. It's a pressure management issue. So you keep pressure inside your trunk, and it has to change based on what you're doing to, not extreme pressure and you explode.
Mm-hmm.
So the diaphragm, if it doesn't move well at all, that
Yeah.
doesn't happen at all. So
Right.
you have to actually address breathing as step one before you even do Kegels.
Mm.
And people don't breathe very well, especially if you're stressed because you usually like upper chest breathe. So then you don't get the
Right.
diaphragm movement. So, and then we use the breath to then integrate that into everything else. So when you exercise, if you breathe well, then you get a
Mm-hmm.
really good response through pelvic floor. So you shouldn't have to then think about your pelvic floor every single time you do exercise. You just breathe well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is a tool like I have clients do, even just if they can do it before meals, just to get into that rest and digest. But it's also shown to be helpful, like even with reflux flare-ups, bloating with pain, like more in a flare-up state. But also, like I definitely refer out if someone has like pelvic floor concerns, but just as sort of like a foundational approach when they're having a bowel movement, and if they're used to straining, instead of straining, like uh, get them like using a stool, but breathing into their fist and sort of like
Yeah.
breathing into their diaphragm. And that kind of, I think, puts some little bit of like just gentle nudge pressure on the pelvic
Yeah.
floor to help with the release versus them like tightening and pushing
Yeah. And when
on
we
the
think
pelvic
about
floor.
the inhale breath is coupled with pelvic floor length. So if you inhale,
Oh,
breathe, your pelvic floor will lengthen at that point in time. So
right.
inhale breath on the toilet,
Ah,
pelvic floor length.
okay. That's a good addition.
So add
And
that,
then,
add that one in.
yes. Okay. And then the last one are squatty potties.
10 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, it changes the position of your hips so your pelvic floor
Right.
can open and lengthen properly. This is why pooping outside in a squat position is always
Yeah.
better.
Mhm. Okay. I
Yeah,
love them
so
too.
get a squatty potty, or even just like a stool, like a kid's stool. I just have one of those. I don't even have a squatty potty. I just put my feet up on something.
Yeah, as long as your hips are, or your knees are elevated above your hips.
Hips, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I get some clients at first that are like, well, I'm not constipated, and everything just comes out. I don't have issues, but then they tell me that they're straining, and I'm like, squatty potty is just a good
yeah,
foundational thing to have,
yeah,
because all of our toilets are so high that like it
yeah,
doesn't happen, right? Unless you're pooping outside or you're using a really low toilet. But yeah, I give them a 10 out of 10, maybe 12 out of 10.
yeah. I was gonna say, can we rate higher?
Yeah.
Diaphragmatic breathing, squatty potty, 15
Yeah.
out of 10.
Okay. So just to wrap things up, I guess if you were to give, we went through that list and we know what your favorites are, but just to wrap things up, would you give like listeners maybe one or two things that they could try or consider today to help better support their pelvic floor health? What would you say? I
Good
know it's a big
question.
question, but
I think understanding pelvic floor relaxation and the breath work is the biggest change that I hear in many of my clients, which I think
ah,
is something easy to implement. So, like, really working on slowing down your breath, really good inhales, really good exhales. The slower you do that and the longer you can do them, it means you're in more of a restful state. So, if you're doing like that's really fast, that's more like you're having troubles relaxing. If you can do
yeah,
like a 4 or 5 second inhale and the same exhale, you're going to
right.
start relaxing a lot better. And that's going to affect all systems of the body. We know how good that is. So,
Mhm.
gut health, general inflammation, resting, nervous system, all that stuff, muscle tissue relaxation.
Mhm.
So, breathe better.
Mm.
Tip number one. And then I think the second one is probably trying to, what can they do today? Blanket ruling everything. Honestly, I would just like try and get someone to help you with what's your actual issue.
Right.
Like if you don't know, stop wasting time like trying to figure it out yourself. Just like book in and see someone. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's not as easy. I understand there are many other barriers, but if it's really something that bothers you, you can actually do so much to fix this and live such a better life. So, like I just look at investing in your health as like something that is a non-negotiable for me, really. I'll take things, I'll sacrifice other things to like go get some help because
Yeah.
you're just wasting so much time trying to navigate it yourself, like a year. Like most of my clients will come from years and years and years of trying to do it online and whatever. And within 3 or 4 weeks, we've like solved, 50% of their problems. And it's like, wow, imagine how good your life would be if you could fix it pretty quickly. So if you
Yeah.
have the capacity to, just go get some help.
Yeah. And like you said too, they might be doing things that sorry, are making things worse that they may think is
Mm.
helping the pelvic floor, but it could actually be working against them, just depending with what they're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Right.
there's just
Yeah.
so much information online. It's really hard to navigate who actually knows what they're talking about, number
Right.
one, and whether it's actually relevant for you. Like what we've talked about this whole time, there is such a big difference with tension, weakness, or laxity. And if you
Right.
don't actually know that that's what they're talking about and that's what you have, then you might be
Mhm.
doing it and making things worse. So
Yeah.
you'll know that because your symptoms won't improve and they'll probably get worse anyway. But I think like don't DIY it. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason why you're not a qualified health professional, like doing that.
Right.
Like, so if it's something that really bothers you, my piece of advice is just go get some help, and someone who cares will give you some hot tips, even if it's just one session. Go away, implement them, see if it works for you, and then you'll
Yeah.
probably be convinced it's actually the right thing. So
Very true. I think there's even just that aspect of kind of added stress when you feel like you're navigating it alone, and then you're like seeing all these things online, you're feeling overwhelmed with what to try, and you're like piecing it together. But even just
yeah,
that adds more
100%.
stress to your life, which then, like you said, can make the pelvic floor tighter. So even just
Yeah,
seeing someone who can help you and knowing that you have a plan and someone to like check in with, that can even just give yourself like help you, take a sigh of relief and relax a little bit too.
Oh,
Just
100%.
knowing.
And like there's something about trusting the process when a professional tells you. Then
Mm,
even if you did the same thing by yourself, there's still this level of doubt, like, is this actually going to work? That your
yeah,
mind and your body is connected. That is a stress and an anxiety in itself. You're
right.
not going to stick to it for as long. You're not going to be as diligent by yourself. We all know that. Like no one's accountable like 100%. And if someone who knows what they're talking about actually tells you what to do, you're probably going to follow it, stick to it, and you'll get results. So like,
Yeah.
it's just so different.
Yeah. Very true. So I guess that leads me into my last question, but how can people get in touch with you? And yeah, for people that want to work with you, what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. So my handle is at her.exercise.physiology. So you're more than welcome to reach out that way. That way you can check out my website, which is www.herexercisephysiology.com.au. I have you can submit inquiries. There's an inquiry form. I always like to jump on like a clarity call with everybody before we get started. And that's just for me to learn a little bit more about people's what's the problem and whether or not I can actually help and what kind of commitment or service would be more beneficial for them, because I find everyone needs something a little bit different. So that's always something really good to do, because you can sort of ask questions then and not feel like, oh, I have to book something in and hopefully this is the thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's like actual functional problems, right? Like if the bladder is got a problem with it, I'm not going to be able to fix your bladder. We do pelvic floor work. So there's a
Right.
component. It's not always the answer.
Right.
So it's nice to have that. So if you're thinking about it, I'm happy to chat beforehand anyway. But those two are probably the main places you will find me if you're interested.
Yeah.
That's probably
So
it.
yeah, I'll link your Instagram and your website in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Courtney. This was an awesome discussion. I think a lot of people listening will be like, yeah, that sounds like me. And now
Yeah.
I feel like, oh, I actually can do something about it. So I think it was an
100%.
awesome chat. And I love exercise, and it makes me sad when people feel like they can't engage in the types of exercise that they want to do because of IBS, gut issues, pelvic floor. But I think for those of you listening, like there are ways that you can get back to doing like the activities that you love. It's just finding out what's going on and where the problem is, and then getting clarity and having a plan to help work through that and get back to
Yeah.
those activities. So
100%.
yeah. Well, thank you for this chat today.
You're welcome. Thanks so
All
much for
right.
having me.